Okay, good morning, guys. And for my political talk today, yesterday I said I was going to give you the three main reasons that I think JFK was assassinated, and I think it was a conspiracy, but they're not really the three main reasons. I could probably give you guys 100 reasons, more substantial than these, but um, with the declassified documents, there was a tape of J. Edgar Hoover explaining to Lyndon B. Johnson how they had to pin it on one person because it could begin a series of events which possibly could lead to nuclear war. And there's so much evidence that I'm going to do on the show, but these three things are three things that, that tape where J. Edgar Hoover is explaining to Lyndon B. Johnson, we have to put this on Oswald because this can't be a conspiracy because it could start a war. And Lyndon B. Johnson agreed. And so these are the three reasons that are three of the main reasons that I'm convinced that it was a conspiracy. So JFK was murdered November 22nd, 1963. So he was killed at 12:30 p.m. in Dallas. And then Lee Harvey Oswald, they say, murdered a police officer named J.D. Tippit. And then he went into a movie theater. He had plenty of money in his pocket, but he just walked right in. It was afternoon in Dallas. There was nobody in the movie theater. Lee Harvey Oswald went to sit right next to somebody else, right next to them in an empty movie theater. Have you ever went to sit right next to somebody in an empty movie theater? Because he thought it was his liaison. And then the police were called because he snuck into the movie theater. And when the police came to get him and the Dallas police were taking him in, the press was kind of interviewing him. And this is one thing that I don't think anybody can explain, because when they asked him if he murdered the president, he said something like, I didn't murder anybody. I'm just a patsy. Now think about those words. I'm just a patsy. If he had just murdered the president by himself, do you think that it's even possible for him to think of that word, I'm just a patsy? Have you ever used the word patsy in your life? Do you think that he could just come up with it on the fly, that this was a conspiracy and that he was made to be the fall guy? Do you really think that on the fly like that, he murdered the president by himself and all of these things are rushing through his head, and that he wasn't very bright, and he comes up with this idea in his head that it was a conspiracy and that he was made to be the fall guy? Have you ever heard anybody use the words I'm just a patsy in your life? And they expect us to believe that Lee Harvey Oswald just made up made up this thing that it was a conspiracy? So that was one of the major things. And then the next day, Jack Ruby, who was was a Dallas nightclub owner, basically a strip club owner, never had done anything altruistic in his life, was in the basement of a Dallas police department and shot Lee Harvey Oswald to death. He had to know he was going to go to jail for the rest of his life or killed. And who knows why he was even in the basement. And when he was asked why he did it, he said because he didn't want Jackie Kennedy to have to stand trial. This is a guy that worked for the mafia. He had never done anything altruistic. So those three things are three things, and I can give you guys 100 other like physical things, the direction JFK's head went. And I'm not going to get into all that. I mean, I'm going to get into all the evidence eventually. But those three things, that Lee Harvey Oswald have you ever walked into an empty movie theater and went to sit right next to somebody when the whole movie theater is empty? You just go into a movie theater, it's empty, and you go sit next to one of the few people in the movie theater. When they ask you why you did it, and you're supposed to have done it by yourself, and you just contrived this story in your head that it was a massive conspiracy and that you were just a patsy, and that a Dallas mob a Dallas mob guy, was so altruistic that he didn't want Jackie Kennedy to stand trial that he murdered Lee Harvey Oswald out of the goodness of his heart. So I'll let you guys make up your minds, but I don't believe a word of that, and I think that obviously it was a conspiracy.